Linux.com presents the Linux Zoo Crew, and today on the Zoo, we will be talking about the state of Linux gaming.
Tonight's show is brought to you by our sister site, distrohunt.org, your free OS directory and project hub. For PC users, find an operating system tailored to your needs. Developers, promote your distribution or find collaborators to assist you on your upcoming project. Don't sit on a waiting list. Register your project on distrohunt.org and get noticed today.
Now on to the state of Linux gaming, and this is the 2015 edition. Many of you will remember, and Toss was with us, so was Edge, and we had a Linux A-Team where we discussed gaming on Linux, and since then a lot has changed in the Linux world. Steam has increased its game library. GOG.com introduced their own Linux platform. Linux has proven it is a competent platform for gaming, and in most cases, it is even a better platform for gaming than other OSs when you consider the smaller footprint Linux requires, allowing more resources available to run those programs. So with that said, we have a lot of food for thought here. But before we get started, I will pass the mic to Deckard Kane, our game night coordinator here at Cup of Linux, and he will introduce our panel of guests.
Tonight with us we have Biff. Say hello, Biff.
Howdy.
Cody, a.k.a. C. Smith. Edge226, the resident wizard.
Hey, how goes?
Iron Claw.
Good evening.
Spatry himself.
Hello.
And Toss today.
Good to be here on Cult of Linux. Haha.
That's right. We're burning for the penguin, baptized in gasoline, right? Now, Steam recently had its Steam OS sale, where a bunch of great titles were made available at a very reasonable price, with inclusion of titles which are planned to be released for Linux/Steam OS later this year. Now, while all that sounds fine and dandy, things have not necessarily been perfect, and we'll talk about some of the great things and some of the not so great things coming to Linux gaming. But first we'll start off with the good, the big boom in games. Now, according to the Phronix website, Steam has released over 1,000 games, and I checked this morning and saw there were 1,010 titles. And if we count the DLCs, then there is 1,863 Linux-compatible products being offered by Valve. Last year, it was close to 600, and I think that was combined. Dozora's website offers 719 Linux games. GOG.com launched their Linux branch, and they're the low man on the totem pole with 209 games. And then we have a new client, which I looked at on Cup of Linux yesterday, that allows you to organize your game libraries, whether it's from Steam, games you have installed on your hard drive, or even games that you're running through an emulator. And this platform is called Lutris. In revealing all of this, it seems to me that Linux gaming has almost tripled. So my first question to the panel of guests is, considering what we have seen, do you think that Linux gaming will become a major contender in the market? And we'll go ahead and start off with you, Biff.
Yeah, I really think so, because we're getting not only more games, it's not just about the quantity, but also the quality. And we look at a couple of Warner Brothers' newest big AAA releases. Dying Light recently, that came out, and that was Linux on day one. And also the upcoming, coming in June, we're getting the new Batman Arkham Knight, which that will be be native Linux from day one. So yeah, definitely the big boys think that Linux is a contender. So yeah, so do I.
What do you think, C. Smith or Cody? I'm sorry.
It's cool. Anyway, yeah, I actually agree with Biff on the fact that Linux can and will be a big contender in gaming. Not just for Steam, not just for good old games, but Wine. That brings a lot of compatibility right there, even if it's just a compatibility layer between Windows games and Linux.
Yes, and I'll have to agree with you, but we'll talk about that later on in the show. Deckard, what's your thoughts?
Had you have asked me before SteamOS was announced, I'd have said no way in heck. It's never going to happen, because there's no major players backing Linux as an alternative to Windows as a gaming platform. But now Valve's on Linux's side, as well as Steam, and all of these different games are coming out here, and we're finally being able to give ourselves a voice and say that Linux is a far superior operating system, especially for games. So I undoubtedly think that Linux will be a major contender in gaming in years to come.
Now, Edge, our resident wizard here, he does his fair share of gaming in Linux. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts on this are, if you look at like titles that are really good that come out on Linux, chances are they're gonna hit the #1 list. Some examples are when Rogue Legacy came out. It was really big. It hit the top seller chart right away. Same is happening right now with Cityscape or City Skylines. That's it. City Skylines. It's #1 on the lists. Why do not as many Windows titles hit like this and get really, really, really big so fast? Maybe because, there's more Linux gamers than they really think there is.
And then, of course, we have Ironclaw on the show. And for those of you who don't know, I think it was like 2 years ago, we used to sit up all night trying to figure out ways to get Windows games running natively on Linux, or if they had a Linux port. There was one night we were actually sitting down and, transcoding videos so that we could get them to play in sharper resolutions and stuff like that. We used to have quite a bit of fun with that. What do you think about this?
It's an interesting question, and I think the future is really, really bright, especially compared to just a few years ago where we couldn't get anything but game servers on Linux.
Okay, well, when we think about what we have seen, I don't even think Macintosh, when it was introduced into the Steam client, I really don't think that we really got to see as much momentum. I think Linux probably has had the strongest amount of momentum where a new platform is concerned, especially when you see what GOG.com has been doing, what Dozora's been doing, although Dozora is kind of, a mixed bag. Some of the game titles they have are really great, and some of them, well, not so great. But it's interesting to see that we've got all these platforms. I think this is going to be I think this is, this is going to grow, especially with what Valve is considering doing, because they are literally bringing the PC into the living room. Now, Deckard has something he wanted to bring up.
A while ago, I'm talking a long while ago, Unix was a big operating system for a lot of researchers, universities, and colleges to do all of their research on. It was a great operating system for that. And with that came a community of people. A lot of people were FLOSS developers who wanted to share source code and do everything by the GPL. Nowadays, that community has really changed into a proprietary, sort of commercialized community, especially now with the SteamOS coming out. Now, my question for the panel here is, where do you think we're going with Linux gaming? We see all this commercialization coming along with SteamOS and proprietary drivers, and when SteamOS comes in, all of these games are going to hit all of these different operating systems. Do you think that we're still going to stay true to our roots in free and open source software development as well as gaming? Or do you think things are going to fly more towards the commercialized space? And do you think that's a good or bad thing? We'll start off with Biff.
Well, that's really the beautiful thing about Linux, is that you're going to have both. You're going to have distros that are set up right out of the box to work good, to run commercial software and start to displace a lot of the dual booting. But there will always be, just like now, there will always be people who who want to run everything as free and open as possible for ideological reasons. No matter how convenient, or no matter how much they try to kill us with convenience on the commercial end, there's people that are very ideologically opposed to anything being commercial, proprietary, closed. So I don't really see it doing any harm. I really think that bringing more people to Linux overall and generating more interest in desktop Linux is going to be good for everyone in the long run.
Okay, that's cool. Cody, what's your take?
Well, with proprietary, you have those on the complete end of the spectrum where they will have nothing proprietary in their system, like Richard Stallman. And then you have those people who don't care, which those are the people Steam, I believe, are aiming at, because Steam is proprietary. Let's get that out of the way. So those who are like Richard Stallman will not have it. But it will bring a lot more people in. That definitely brings exposure too.
Alrighty, and Edge, what's your take?
My take on it is that the two sections of things, although they commingle, they are sort of separate, and everyone else is saying this as well. In that, yeah, Steam is proprietary, but you don't have to have the proprietary stuff. You can continue doing things as you always have. But I think that when us getting more options is definitely a good thing.
Ironclaw?
Well, I think the open nature of Linux and one of its greatest advantages, at least in my opinion, is the ability to determine for yourself. So let people make their own decisions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Spatry?
I really don't think this is going to hamper innovation in any way whatsoever. The free and open source community is still going to be creating lots of great applications because, there are many different types of niche users, people who use Linux. People like me, for instance, I want a nice operating system that I can control how it runs. I have everything set up the way I want it to, and yes, there is room for proprietary stuff. I spend a lot of money on my, on my desktop publishing software, and I want to be able to run it. And of course, it runs on Windows, and of course, I can run it in Wine. Yes, I do agree with what was said about, the free software purists. They're going to avoid that. But, the general consensus, or at least this is what I believe based on what I have read online, a lot of people who are using Linux, GNU Linux, whatever you want to call it, a lot of people are screaming to have AAA software. People want a quality office suite. People want to be able to run their AAA games on their favorite OS. They want their computer to obey them, not Microsoft, not Apple. And when we think about what Valve's contribution, Valve has made many tools available to developers to make it easy for them to port games over to Linux. This is probably why we're seeing a lot of titles coming over to our platform and why we see other game companies stepping up to the plate to offer Linux titles. So I really don't think it's going to affect anything, to be honest.
Good to hear. What about you, Toss?
I would have to agree with Spatch here. I just want it to work, plain and simple, no matter what I use or how I use it. So, yeah.
It's good to hear. It's good to hear. A lot of people are saying, we might see a huge culture shift in the community, but I don't think that that'll be a huge thing. I think there might be a little bit of a separation between the purists and the people who just want things to work. But in the end of the day, all of this will improve Linux as an operating system. Back to you, Spat.
Okay, and, I actually... earlier today, I actually took the time to take another look at the video that was released in 2013 where Gabe Newell was talking at LinuxCon. And basically what he was talking about was how he was trying to put it in a nice way. But basically now you have operating systems that are trying to lock users into their own little walled garden. And so by being able to offer a system, that allows gamers, because he was also talking about, a lot of the gamers are actually creating content more so than what Valve is putting out that end users want to consume, and to be able to push updates to people without having to go through the walls of Microsoft or Apple, waiting 6 months before they can push an update to their subscribers and that sort of thing. He felt that offering a platform that is free of those restrictions is beneficial to the community. And yes, I spoke about the tools and that sort of thing. And now we see other companies stepping up to the plate, offering Linux titles. Maybe they feel Valve is onto something. And my question to the panel is, do you think Valve is onto something here? Do you feel that they're making the right decision by actually doing this? And if so, why do you feel that, and do you see this as something that's really going to eventually crush the Windows world or other gaming platforms? Or do you see this as something that's just going to, that's going to be like competition in the market, if you will? We'll start with you, Biff.
Well, Valve's actually kind of quiet with its numbers, so we don't know exactly how many Linux games they're moving out compared to Windows, but they're releasing more and more Linux games, and that should tell us more than anything. And especially that's what that's really the biggest indicators that more and more, especially the AAA titles coming in, that I think especially as we start to see like VR become a thing, that these kind of novel new ways of doing things are going to be even at the base of the core tools of a lot of the new ways people game are going to be support Linux from the very beginning, and we're finally going to see that where kind of the quote that Linus Torvalds had about how an OS should just kind of stay out of your way and you should be running software. We're finally going to kind of see that where that's what the developers are now able to do, is they're able to just develop their software, and the OS isn't an issue that they'll even have to give that much thought to.
Good one. How about you, Cody?
Well, it will be a good thing, if only just because it gives the gamer that much more customization and choice with their software. And as I said in the chat, Valve was not the first to look into Linux. That was EA, actually, but that should say something, that Valve's the one who took the plunge.
Deckard.
I can't say that it's going to be a bad thing, because the more interest that's generated in Linux, that means the more developers are going to be there, the more users are going to be there, so manufacturers will jump on board with creating drivers. So I think that Steam as a whole has a very, very large potential of creating a really popular discussion about Linux and getting a lot more people to move over this way. As far as crushing Windows for gaming, I really don't think that that's going to be possible. I kind of see it like killing Godzilla with a pistol. Windows has been around for far too long. Their roots are as deep as they can go, especially with manufacturers. But I really do think that Steam and Linux as a team can make Windows run for their money.
Edge.
Well, I agree. As Biff said, there's the VR aspect. There's Valve is really doing some amazing things in terms of bringing that stuff up, making it Linux compatible. And another thing is, I stream on Twitch, and you'll never see me have my stream cut out because Windows decided to update, because I choose when I update. I have that choice. It's not forced upon me. So I've seen people who literally, Windows would pop up, you need to restart your machine right now, restarting in 10 seconds, no option not to. They're in the middle of streaming to people. They've had their uptime and gathered their people together, and their stuff suddenly goes down. And that's something that, as that happens more and more and people see that, that's not happening to Linux gamers, we might have a bigger move over there once on the streamer side, once it becomes more prevalent that SteamOS is around and that things are easier for them.
And really, guys, Microsoft is going to kill Microsoft better than anything else ever will.
Iron Claw.
I was actually going to say something to that effect. I increasingly fall on the side of personal choice more than anything. No matter what choice a person makes, if it's the right choice for them. So if they choose Linux, great. If they choose Windows, great. And anything increases those options, I consider to be a good thing. And yeah, I do believe that if anybody kills Microsoft in the gaming markets, it'll be Microsoft.
Toss.
Competition? Yeah, that's good. Crushing the competition? I see there are two chances of that happening right now, slim and none. Unless, and this is important, unless you have the perfect marriage of graphics drivers, graphics cards, and one or two signature games. If Linux can get all three working in harmony, then maybe you could have hyper competition. Crushing, not in the immediate future, but if those three can match, cards, drivers, and the signature game, and we've talked about this, for me it's Halo, but if Linux can get their own version of a Halo or something similar, and then the rest of it falls into place, yeah, then maybe Microsoft would have to take a look at this. Yeah.
Okay, and many of you know that a lot of the reason why so many games are coming out, well, in November, Steam is going to be releasing their Steam box. It's going to be hitting the store shelves, and obviously they want to have a lot of titles. But really, I've said this before, it wasn't on the last A-Team podcast, but we had another gaming show, I think, before then. And I really think The only way that they're going to really be able to cram this down people's throats and force people to buy into this console or even just getting into Linux is if they were to release a AAA title exclusive to SteamOS/Linux first, and then make the Windows and Mac users wait. And I still have a stinking thinking feeling they very well could possibly be holding back Half-Life 3 because we haven't seen that come out yet, I don't think, or at least I haven't seen it come out yet. I think if they were to do something like that, well, that would probably cause a major outrage. But the thing is, if they really want this to succeed, they have to do something like this in order to come out ahead strategically. They've got to have some kind of AAA title to offer with this machine. Okay, so you go out and you purchase this device, and it comes with this brand new game for free. And then the Windows Mac users have to wait. This is a good way that they can make this go. So anyway, that's how I kind of see it. I think there is a good possibility if they can pull that off.
Yeah, actually, along that idea, I remember at one point a while back before Half-Life 2 came out, the idea of a native Half-Life client being on Linux at one point was actually an April Fool's joke. And then if you might remember a couple of years ago, there was actually a similar April Fool's joke where someone put out a fake press release saying that Half-Life 3 was going to be a Linux exclusive.
Imagine that. Deckard, your turn.
Alrighty, so I was thinking a little while earlier here in the day with Spatry, what does Valve's actions do for little distributions such as Spatry's Cup of Linux and Matthew Moore's Respin? What does that do for those distributions? Because if we see a more commercialization coming down with proprietary drivers, there's the likelihood that manufacturers like NVIDIA or AMD might license their drivers to certain Linux platforms, therefore driving all of the users that way. So that'd be something that we'll kind of have to look out for because, as you know, proprietary developers such as Microsoft can be quite sneaky in the sorts of things that they do. So while traction with Linux gaming is a good thing, we really have to be careful with the sorts of things that come down the tube, so to speak, because it would be really quite a hard hit on the Linux community if we get certain things like licensing to specific distributions of Linux for drivers happening. I think that'll be a really bad thing for the culture and a really bad thing for the community as a whole. What are your thoughts on that, Biff?
Yeah, I mean, that's really kind of the issue. We're going to see a lot of changes next time or in the near future because especially with Wayland and Mir on the horizon, that's going to there's going to be a lot of changes with proprietary drivers that are going to happen with that, with some of the issues with kernel pass-through and licensing and what's available and open. So, yeah, I mean, there certainly could be a scenario where only certain distros have access, but overall, creating a larger interest in Linux will bring more people in, or in Linux game will bring so many more people in to using Linux that smaller distros, as long as they add something legitimate that people have a reason because they want some neat feature or functionality that some developers added to their spin, it'll still overall end up good for everyone.
Okay, what about you, Cody? Edge, what about yourself?
Honestly think in this case, if the proprietary drivers or if the proprietary driver manufacturers were to do something to make it so certain Linux distributions were more prevalent than others, I think there would be a backlash by the Linux community and they would have to retrace their steps and fix their issues.
Okay, Ironclaw?
Well, the graphics card manufacturers, I don't think they have a good reason to do that sort of thing because they're probably not so much interested in the gaming market as they are in the graphical workstations market, which is where they make a lot of sales. And the fact that we get performance gaming is kind of subsidiary to that, and it's kind of a nice side effect. But I don't think they're going to try to make their market smaller.
Okay, and what about you, Spatry?
Well, think about this. Okay, and this isn't related to graphics drivers per se, but how long did we have to wait? Because officially, when the first Steam client came out, it was available for Ubuntu. Okay, and how long did we have to wait before it came to Manjaro, Fedora, Slackware and all the other distros. Not even a month. We already had, they already had figured out how to port those over. And guess what? The Linux community is absolutely brilliant. They'll come up with ways to get these drivers and that sort of thing working on other distros. So I think the question is moot there.
Very good point. What about you, Toss?
I see two things here. Number one, Linux needs a signature exclusive game that's on par with the best that Microsoft can offer if Linux is to move into the future. Now, whoever does it really doesn't matter. The problem is, the real matter here is making a high quality game can take millions, tens of millions of dollars. Who's going to pay for that? Number two, in the 5 years I've been using Linux, full time as dual booting and one or two machines with exclusively Linux, I've only had one issue with graphics drivers that just didn't work. And me and Spatry have often joked about this.
How about them ATI drivers, Toss?
Oh, kiss my Linux kernels. One time out of 5 years is not bad. That's actually a pretty good record for Linux. However, if someone is new to this, it only takes one time for a newbie to go through this. It doesn't work, and then that newbie says Linux sucks. That would not be fair, of course, but that's why if Linux has to move into the future as far as gaming goes, I still say, and I will stick with it, the three people have to get married correctly. The cards, the graphics cards, the drivers, and an exclusive signature game in which someone else besides Linux, like someone in Microsoft or Sony or whoever, stand up and say, "Who's that for? Linux? Really? I have to take notice." Then you will see this whole process accelerated in terms of the growth of gaming on the Linux platform.
Excellent. Yeah, there was a really good point there. The Linux community would never stand for such a thing like that. And that's really good to hear. I don't think that all of these people that use Linux would ever allow such a thing like that to happen, which is really, really good to hear. I honestly believe that with all the new innovations that are coming down the pipe from Valve and from Steam, as well as, all of the game developers, that's not going to harm us in any way. If anything, it'll make us stronger. Back to you, Spat.
All right. Well, we probably need to step this up a little bit because we've already been a half hour. But the thing is, we've got some other really good topics that we want to cover. So we can kind of step it up a little bit. I'd like to ask my panel of guests, and if you don't know, just go ahead and say don't know, and we'll skip to the next person. This is for those of you who have played Linux games and you've also played their Windows counterparts. Would you say there is a difference in performance when you've played a Windows version of the game and then you played that same game on Linux? Would you say that the gaming performance is better or worse? Let's start with you, Biff.
Yeah, the one that I looked into the most was with Metro. I forget if it's Half-Life or 2033, which one I actually have. But yeah, overall I had better performance in Linux. I was able to get higher frame rates. I did have some graphical bugs that were fixed with an update, but overall I've generally seen things run just a little bit smoother, a little bit faster in Linux. Or more recently, actually, Trine 2 is another one that the Linux variant became available on GOG. I've had the game on there for a while, and it actually ran quite a bit better on my one laptop running Linux on a machine with integrated graphics. It was running better than my slightly older laptop with a dedicated card. So they got it working well enough that it was outperformed a machine with a dedicated laptop with a dedicated card. So I think just the overall, being that Linux is lighter, it gives some games an advantage. But then I think you get a few more little graphical glitches and things, but that'll be fixed in time.
All right, how about you, C. Smith?
It really depends on the game whether you're going to see better or worse performance on Linux, because some games that we've had run phenomenally when they don't run at all well on Windows. And it can also be the polar opposite, where it runs terribly on Linux while it runs phenomenally on Windows. So, yeah.
I'll have to agree with you there in that it can be a mixed bag. How about you, Deckard?
Pass for me.
Edge.
Well, like C. Smith said, it really depends on the developer and the game. It depends on how it's ported, if it's a port. But this really brings me back in time to where I used to do wine stuff, and Diablo 2, I don't know if anyone has played that, but the loading
Oh, yeah.
screen has a golem holding a goblet, or a little demon holding a goblet. In Windows, the programming is actually set to where that goblet fills up slowly. In Linux, something bypasses this, and the goblet, the loading time is like, bing, done. So there's potential there, but it depends on the developer.
Ironclaw.
Get mixed bag. It really depends on how the application was originally written. Sometimes you'll find applications, especially if you're running them through Wine, that end up relying on bugs in Windows, and they'll never work properly in Wine. And other times, maybe they're slow in Wine, maybe they're fast. You know, I've hit both ways.
All right, and how about you, Toss? Have you done that or no?
Between the brief games I've played both in Windows 8.1 and Linux, the quality is good in both very good so far. If you press me for the edge in terms of overall performance, I still have to give a slight edge to Windows.
Okay, and when I think about how I've, because I've looked at native Linux native, and I'm comparing also my experiences with Wine, I will agree that it is a mixed bag, but I have to say that it's leaning more towards the Linux side of things. Even when running games in Wine, for some reason I just notice just slightly better performance. And as Edge has mentioned, sometimes I'd see faster loading times, but that is not always the case. Depends on who programmed the game. All right, Deckard, you have an announcement about our tournament, so why don't you let everybody in on that?
Absolutely. So, Cup of Linux is doing its very first tournament. Yes, we're going to be playing OpenRA versus each other for some special prizes. Each winner will receive a Steam code at the time of winning if they complete the tournament. So the first place person will get a Steam code, as well as a random player from all of the games will also receive a Steam code. Stay tuned for date and time. We're going to make sure that everyone gets signed up here. Spatry's latest post entitled Tournament sign-up sheet is where you can go to enter in your name to get signed up to play the tournament. Again, time and date will be specified later on. I will be sending out a message to everyone of when they will be playing and who they will be playing, as well as a list of all of the other games in case you wanted to get in on that. So stay tuned for that. If you are coming into the community, just make sure you're registered on the forum. Pop into Mumble and make sure you get a voice check. Make sure everything's working out for you. If you need some help installing the game, send me a message. My name's Deckard Kane on the forum. I'll be more than happy to help you get it installed and running. That's it from us. Make sure you stay tuned for everything, and we'll most likely be releasing a video letting you know what's all the particulars and what's going on.
And now, Deckard, that's going to be like a gift certificate, the prizes, correct? So that people will be able to go on Steam and pick out the games that they want. Is that right?
That's correct. I'll be giving you a code to enter into Steam, and you can get whatever you'd like.
All right. Awesome. Good stuff indeed. Okay. Now let's go. I said earlier we would talk about the good things about gaming, and then we'll move on to the bad. There was something that was kind of bad last time, and this one I'm going to directly throw at Edge 226. You mentioned on our last 18 show that there were issues regarding transparency in that games which do not run on Linux should not be offered to lull a consumer into making a purchase for something which does not currently run on their platform. So, Edge, do you feel that this has gotten better, worse, or has it stayed the same?
I don't really have a comment on the issue because I haven't really been purchasing games, so I haven't seen what's actually happening lately. So I don't want to say it's getting better or it's getting worse, or I have heard other people make complaints, but they're different complaints than the ones that I made. So I really don't have a comment on this particular question at this time.
Okay, and then real quickly, I'll just touch on this. I've noticed some game titles saying install now. You go to install it, and then a pop-up message says this game is not available for your platform. And I noticed that a few times, especially this weekend with the with the X game series, some of the older titles in the X Beyond the Frontier, X2, Extension, those games. I noticed they'd have that install button. I'm thinking, oh, cool, I can install this in Linux. And then I go to install the thing because it's a free weekend and that sort of thing. And then it's saying it's not available. So I think they really need to work on it and improve it a little bit better. And then another bad thing, and I don't know if this has happened to any of you, so when I do pass this on to you, if you haven't experienced it, just pass it on to the next person. Have any of you purchased a Steam game for Linux and found that it didn't work? And if you did find that you ran that issue, were you able to eventually get those games working? We'll start with you, Biff. Did that happen or no?
Yeah, I've had that one with The Witcher 2. That one I run all AMD hardware, and that one is famous. Once I bought it, I found out that one's famous for being kind of poorly wine wrapped, where even though they list it as a Linux game, it only works on specific NVIDIA cards. I've heard there's an update that's fixed that, but yeah, that's a problem.
I can confirm that works. Has that happened to you, C. Smith?
Only once in the recent year, and that was Portal 2 when it was still in beta for Linux, and it installed, but it did not run due to bugs, so yeah. Apparently it's gotten a bit better.
Oh, okay, awesome. And how about you, Deckard?
While it's never happened to me, I'll give you this quick advice. Check out the game on other websites, make sure that it does install no problem before you start buying games, because developers do lie.
Edge.
I have had this issue. I recently had it with Mountain Blade Warband. Not that the game didn't work. The game worked flawlessly. However, the configuration didn't work, and when the game is very centered around mods and you can't access the section to change your mods, it kind of gets a little annoying then. Oftentimes you just got to look at the Steam forums and someone else has had the issue, someone else has figured it out, and then you can get it resolved from there. It's usually more or less a dependency issue of the game needs a dependency that you don't have installed, but the developer does not actually list the dependencies that are required on the specifications, which I would love the developers to start listing the dependencies so we know what we need to have installed prior to installing the game. That would fix it all.
Ironclaw.
Can't say I've ever bought a Linux-specific title that has not worked.
All right, Toss.
Spatry, I haven't tried it yet, but as a Windows user, I must say I find all this topic very amusing.
All right. I had this happen twice, okay? One game was Torchlight 2, and that one was just a configuration bug. And then I also had this happen to Anomaly Defenders, and that game still doesn't run. And that brings us on to our next subject, running Steam using Play on Linux or Wine. And I got this way of thinking in my mind. Valve must know a lot of people are trying to get Steam games running in Wine, because if I compare the performance of Wine today versus 2 years ago, Steam in Wine plays almost all of my games that I have tried just this week alone. And I mean, I downloaded a lot of games just to play around with it, because I will be having a video coming up on running Steam and Play on Linux, and I was amazed because I have games in my library that I could never get working in Wine, and now all of a sudden they do. And this worked for Anomaly Defenders. The game worked flawlessly. Can't get it working in Linux. So that is an option for you. And then I'm still playing Torchlight 2 in Wine, even though I did figure out how to get the Linux native version working. But I figured, well, it's still installed in Wine, so I'll just keep playing that, because the game performance seems to be about the same. So I think Valve has done quite a bit to tweak their Steam client and that sort of thing. Because every time you download a game, you get all the dependencies in there. If you go into the Steam Apps Common folder and then the name of the game folder, they have a redistrib file folder. And it's got all your necessary dependencies bundled in there. So if it needs .NET, that's included. It's got DirectX, it's got vCredit, and whatever else it needs. And the thing is, if you try and launch the game and it doesn't work, usually what I'll do is I'll just open up the Play on Linux configurator and just have the Play on Linux configurator download it and install those dependencies. And usually I have pretty good success. And even then, if the game doesn't launch, sometimes I'll just run the game from the debugger and see if it gives me any clues to help me find that out. But I found I've had to do that less and less as of late because the performance has gotten a lot better. Have any of you had any experience playing with Steam in Play on Linux? We'll start with you, Biff.
No, not really. I keep a separate hard drive around that's exclusively for gaming. That's all I use it for. If I want to play a Linux game or a Windows game, I jump over there. So yeah, I only use Wine for a few kind of office-related stuff programs.
Awesome. How about you, C. Smith?
Out of my probably 80 some odd Windows game library, the only one which has recently come to Linux that I actually play relatively often are Civilization 5 and Homeworld Remastered. The other
Awesome game.
80 some odd I don't play, and they run really well. Civ 5 ran pretty damn well right out of the box, right out of the get-go.
Yeah, and Homeworld 2 took a little bit of work. How about you, Deckard?
Had you have come to me when I first started using Linux, I would have heard you saying things like, Wine is the biggest piece of crap and waste of time that I've ever seen in my life. Oh man, I hated it back when I started playing with Linux. But nowadays with Play on Linux, they're absolutely amazing. Some of the games that I used to play back in 2006 run perfectly fine in Linux now, especially when old Windows versions like XP are going dead. This is a very, very alternative to installing a Windows XP box. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, and the nice thing about it is, you can actually change which version of Windows you have on the fly. Just open up your Wine configuration tool, and if it barks at you because it needs Windows 7 or something like that, you can just change it on the fly, install the program, and then change it back to Windows XP, and it'll still run. It's awesome. That's things you can do with it. About. Absolutely. Edge, what do you think?
I just had a friend show up, so pass.
Ironclaw.
Well, I don't play with Play on Linux very often. However, with a combination of Wine and Wine Tricks and some other things, I've found that I can make all sorts of things work that I couldn't even just a year ago. As I started playing with games that I had gotten through the Star Wars Humble Bundle.
Yeah, well, back in the day when we used to hang out all night messing around with, configuration of game and stuff like that, you'll remember that I was running Wine Bear. The only problem is after switching to Manjaro, it's constantly installing the latest development build. And what happens is you run into regressions. So having Play on Linux allows you to have several different versions of Wine, and that's why I had to switch over to that. Toss, are you doing anything with Wine? Besides Mad Dog 2020 Pinot Grigio or Echo Domani?
No, I prefer red wine with my steak. Thank you. No, but quick question, quick newbie question. And I really don't know this. Which is easier for a newbie, Play on Linux or Wine?
Play on Linux, hands down.
Oh, hands down. Hands down, Play on Linux.
Thank you.
Yeah, check it out. Absolutely amazing piece of software.
Absolutely. Lots of bells and whistles and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, guys, we did not get to talking about Lutris, but I will say, see my video on YouTube. I'm going to have another video coming out this week on it. And Lutris is another is a utility that lets you connect to Steam, to Zora, and all these places, and it lets you organize your entire game library. And this means even if you do emulation, so if you got MAME installed and you got all your favorite coin-operated games from back in the 80s loaded into it, if you got ScumVM or any other game emulators, you got your Atari 2600 game ROMs and stuff like that, this will let you organize all of your games and that sort of thing. So check out my video if you have not done so already. I will have more stuff on this later. I invited the developer to come in. It looked like he peeked in, but might have had problems with Mumble. So hopefully we can get him in on a later show to talk about Lutris. But we've run out of time, and we have run way over time on this, actually. So I'd like to take this time to thank everybody who has joined us in the listening room. I've got a little surprise for you guys. Stay put. As soon as the show's over, I'm going to have my mom reach into a bucket. I wrote all your names down, all of you in the listening room, and I got your names on a little card here. Mom's going to reach into the box and call out a name, and one of you guys are going to get a Steam key for Dead Space. I'm giving away a copy of Dead Space.
That's a good game, by the way.
Yeah,
That's a very
absolutely.
good, yeah.
So I'm giving away a copy of Dead Space. Biff, thank you for joining us. Cody, great to have you on the show as always. Deckard, awesome co-host. We got to do this again, buddy. Edge, thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely.
Ironclaw, great having you. Total BS today. It's news and nonsense tomorrow, and I got some nonsense for you. You're gonna love it. So, guys, be here tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, UTC -5, for the Sunday night news and nonsense report. Thank you, all of you, once again, and add me on G Plus, and I'll let you know when we're having our next Zoo Crew podcast. Peace out.
Woohoo! Bye bye.